Hello bass family and welcome to Everything Bass. Today we're moving on with modes 2, the Dorian mode. Before we proceed, if this is the first video you've seen, it might be helpful for you to go back and watch my intro to the modes where I kind of talk about, in a very general, kind of quick hit, I talk about how the modes are created. And then modes 1 I did as Ionian, which most of you know is also just the common major scale. So today we're going on the Dorian mode, and I sometimes just refer to it as Dorian scale because I think, again, as I mentioned in previous videos, some students seem to get hung up on the concept of modes. They think, oh, it's too hard, I don't want to learn that. So if I refer to them as scales, it seems like it kind of calms the hysteria, which is great because Dorian is a phenomenal scale. So let's first of all learn how it's built. So if we start on D Dorian, or the D, and we play only the notes of the key of C, which is all natural notes, we would get this: D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. So we get this pattern. Now, what's important to kind of realize is that also shows, proves how it's made. It's the second mode. So in C major, the second note of C major is D. So if we build a scale off of that D, but use the notes of the C, we get this pattern. Now, we can look at any scale, and by understanding intervals, we can understand what chords this scale would work with. So I'm going to go into that now, but again, because YouTube's material sometimes is presented in a non-linear fashion, and you could be seeing this out of order of the rest of the videos I shot, I would encourage you, if you're not familiar with what the names of the different intervals within an octave are, to go back and check my series called Understanding Intervals. There are 6 units, 6 short videos, and each video covers 2 intervals. When you can understand that, I think it's a big help to understanding which scales match up with which chords. Likewise, if you want to dive deeper, I did 4 videos on the different triads: major, minor, diminished, and augmented. That's real helpful. And you can go through the 4 videos I did on the 7th chords, which is major 7, minor 7, dominant 7, and minor 7 flat 5. I know that's a lot of videos. But one of the most common questions I get asked when people direct message me is, in what order should I attack these videos? And so I try to kind of give you guys my concept of how I'm presenting it. So if you want to do it that way, you would at least have a path. So again, understanding intervals, understanding triads, understanding the 7th chords. Then when we start talking about what we're going to go into now, it might make more sense. So let's do that right now. Whenever you have a scale that's new to you, one thing is to try to find out where the 3rd interval is, the 5th interval, and the 7th interval is. So you literally can do that by counting up the scale. So since we know this is our pattern, we can count up and go 1, 2, 3. We have a minor 3rd. Then we can count up to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have a perfect 5th. Now right there, that tells us that this scale contains within it a minor triad. So it's not really that difficult then to understand that if you have a chord sheet you're working off of and you see an A minor chord, that this Dorian scale has an, like A Dorian has an A minor triad within it, so they match up in that aspect. We're going to go a little deeper now. So we found out that it has a minor 3rd and a perfect 5th. So where's the 7th? So same thing, we count up 7 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's a minor 7 interval. So now we know the arpeggio within this scale is a minor 7 arpeggio. Kind of same thing. You're playing through a chart and you see a G minor 7 chord. Well, okay, well, one of my options is to play a G Dorian because it has a G minor 7 arpeggio within it. So what you're going to learn as you dig deeper, or some of you might know this now because of the studies you've done previous to this, is there are a couple options, great options, when it comes to matching up chords to scales. Like in the minor family alone, there's a lot of different scales you can choose. So if they all have the same arpeggio, then what makes them different from each other is what we call the color tones, the passing tones, or scale tones, because they're not chord tones, they're notes of the scale. So let's look at those right now. So in Dorian, we have the root, of course, and we have a major second. and that's a pretty common interval. There's only a few options where you'll see that as a minor second. So then we have the minor third, as we talked, a perfect fourth, a perfect fifth, a major sixth, and that's really kind of how I identify Dorian from, say, Aeolian or Phrygian, is that it's got this major sixth here, a minor seven, and an octave. So, you know, if I kind of restate things, it's because I feel they're important and I want to make sure you guys get it. But if you're improvising over some changes and you see a minor seven or a minor triad, Dorian is a good option. And your secondary consideration, first of all, you define that they share the same chord tones. And then your secondary is what scale tones do you want to use? What makes this different from Aeolian? What makes this different from Phrygian? And things like that. So one of my favorite exercises to do, and you can do this a couple ways, 3 ways, which is you could record yourself on a looping pedal playing a chord. And I actually did create a video called Playing Bass Chords, so you can go and look that on my channel. And I think it might be called Bass Chords. But you could record yourself looping, playing just one chord. And I would try to avoid being a little fanciful with rhythms. Like if you're going to do D Dorian, just hit the chord and let it sustain on your looper. The reason why is I just want you to hear the tonality of the chord and then play the scale over it and listen to those non-chord tones and how, like, what kind of emotions do they bring up? How do you feel they resolve? Like, what's great notes that can follow those notes and things like that. By doing that, I call that fingerprinting, because you're getting an identity for this mode that separates from the other scales that you're going to study. Second way is you can use your cell phone, and there's a lot of different voice memo and recording, digital recording things. You could record yourself playing the chord. Hopefully you have a system where you can play it back louder, or maybe mix it into some headphones where you can hear your bass equally with that. But that's another option. Now the third option is something that I'm hoping to launch in the coming weekends, which is a play-along series where I give you WAV files that you'll be able to download if you're a Patreon subscriber, you're a Backstage Pass subscriber, and you'll be able to download these WAV files and play along with them. And there'll be simple ones initially, like just major chord progressions, minor chord progressions, diminished chords mixed in with those, things like that, where you can practice just doing triad improvisations. And of course, you could then just take any of my minor chord progressions that I have WAV files for and just practice Dorian over them. And I'll give you hints on that when I actually present the material. So, so now let's look about technically playing it, because there are some accepted ways that seem to be the most efficient. And the reason I kind of say it that way is, you know, we all have different hands. My hands do stuff like this, you know, my hands are goofy. So you might see me finger something one way and you're like, that's odd. So I always try to research the most common way and, to finger different scales and passages. This was how I was taught at MI, and it just became second nature to me, and I actually see the economy of motion in it. So let me kind of run it through you. So get set up on the D and play the first 5 notes without shifting at all. Now when you shift now to here and go up to the octave. Now when you come down, this is kind of how I've always been taught it and how I like to play it. I'm coming down, then I shift with my ring finger to the 5th. So I'm going up, shift, come down. Now what do you say? Well, that's okay, no duh. But some people were shifting like with their pinky and then having to make this kind of awkward shift right there, which is not real comfortable. Coming down by shifting there, it seems like a very smooth way to descend on the scale. Whereas this, that's not very comfortable, and also kind of inhibits, like if you're playing patterns and stuff, having this makes it a lot harder to do. So I encourage you to try my fingering. And if you come up with a different fingering, one of the ways you can do is you can comment in it, if you can kind of describe what you're doing in the comment section below, or shoot a video, go over to our Facebook page or Facebook group, and it's just search in Facebook, Everything Bass with Dale Titus. It's actually a page now that I think about it. Just follow it, jump in there, show the video saying, hey, this is how I play it. And believe me, no ridicule, because again, everyone's hands are different. There might be something we all can learn from the way you do it. So there we have Dorian. It is the only mode I'm going to be showing you of these 7 modes that has a shift in the middle in its most common fingering. And I say that again because this is the most common fingering I showed you. I do know sometimes people do that. To me, that seems like a lot of extra work. So I would just focus first on this finger and then maybe move on to the other options. And it should be said, every time I introduce a new scale, and you're going to get tired of me saying this, but I created a series called Things to Do with Scales, because sometimes, and I know I walked in these shoes. I would learn a scale and kind of do this and go, all right, I got it, but I really didn't. So it's only when you can run through some different exercises using the scale that it really gets the pattern and the sound in your head, but also shows you different like muscle memories and different melodic phrasings you can do. So I'd encourage you to check that out. Applying Dorian to every one of those. Well, there you have it. That's Dorian for you. Let me move on to the Encore item. Excuse me as I check out my notes. Okay, so as I started this channel, and I wanted to include Encore items as a little something at the end of each video, maybe introduce you guys to something new, show you a new educational resource, a new video, a new concert video, concert DVD or something. I made a list of like all my influences, and I really thought about it in preparation for today's video shoot. And one of the guys that really just excited me so much was Roger Glover, and of course most notably from Deep Purple fame. Although great producer, yeah, he's just a really important part of our music community, our bass community. But everyone always talks about Machine Head and Burn and those, and they're incredible albums. So I thought maybe I would go a little deeper to an album that maybe some of you haven't really given a shot, listened to, and that is Perfect Strangers. Now this came out in 1984, and I bought it the day it came out, and well, it's probably an overstatement, right after it came out. And first of all, it was cool to hear like a classic band playing and recording, but with modern techniques where you could really hear some things. And the guitar playing, of course, is amazing. But, obviously I'm going to listen to Roger. And I loved the way he writes, but I loved the way he wrote the bass lines on this. The standout tracks for me that I would encourage you to check out are, of course, Perfect Strangers, the title. I also love Knocking at Your Back Door, and there's 2 others, Nobody's Home and A Gypsy's Kiss. Those 4 tracks, just looking at my MP3 player, I hit the most, and so I listened back to them like, yeah, I get it right now. Roger has a way of being both like fiery and energetic, but in the groove too. And just locking it down in the pocket. And yeah, I know you don't say that a lot with hard rock and heavy metal bass players, but you can say it about Roger. I love his tone. I love everything about this recording, and I wore this thing out, man. It's so fortunate now that we can have either CDs or MP3s, because in the early days, as you're trying to learn these bass tracks, you would just play the album so much that you would just wear it out, and you'd end up having to buy it again and again. All right, so there we have modes 2. Dorian, so getting to know the Dorian mode or Dorian scale, and moving on with Encore item, we did Deep Purple, Perfect Strangers. Check it out. Such a great album. Such a great album. As always, guys, it means the most to me if you could like, share, and subscribe to this channel. I mentioned earlier, but you can always go, if you want to go a little deeper, if you want to treat these more like actual private lessons and have the written material in your in a binder that you can review easily, I'd encourage you, and I'd be thankful if you'd go to patreon.com/everythingbass. The link is in the description below. And consider becoming a monthly Backstage Pass subscriber. At the time recording, it's only $8 a month. And that gives you access to not just the materials for this video, but every video I've ever posted that had sheet music to it. And if you're like, but I don't sight read, it's okay. Everything I put up there is either, well, it's both in standard notation and tab. I make sure to include both so that no one gets left out. And also, I include a lot of neck diagrams because I know some people are visual learners. I'm a visual learner, so that can actually help too. If you have any difficulty signing up, please just comment in the section below if somehow it didn't make sense to you, or you can email me directly at dtitus@daletitus.com. Thanks so much. Get out there and play with Dorian. It's an amazing scale. All right, I'll talk to you later.